Hello, Davina. Hi, Ahmad.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our third session of our International Future MDs in STEM Summer Program. We're incredibly excited to have you all with us today. As you might be able to see, our guest speaker for today is here. His name is Matthias, but we'll let him introduce himself. He'll be talking to you today about his journey into medicine and such. So we'll let him take it away. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and he might be able to call on you if he has time for questions or perhaps maybe answer some at the end. But without further ado, Matthias, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Davina and Ahmad. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. I want to thank MedStem Empowered to opening this space to be here and do this. My name is Matheus Moreira Sanchez Perati. I know it's a mouthful. But I'm a fourth-year medical student at ToroCom, and I'm also the executive director for F1 Doctors, which is a nonprofit organization focused on providing free peer-to-peer mentorship and resources for international students who are pursuing a medical career in the United States. So I'll go more into that towards the end, but if you have any questions, just please let me know, okay? All right, so there you go. Can everyone see my screen okay? Just checking. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So, starting, I'm just going to do a quick introduction about myself, talk a little bit about my life before the US, what I did to get here, and the steps that I took, mostly in high school, and then talk about my medical journey, the process of applying to medical school as an international student, really just share my experience and my point of view of things, so that you can have hopefully you can have some takeaways and a better perspective of things that you can do and improve on when you're applying for medical school. And then talk about what your options are. And I think 4 through 6 are really more for you to, learn more about your options, and then some tips and resources of how to get to your goal and dream and how you can achieve, your MD, your DO, your MD, PhD. And lastly, just a Q&A. If you have any questions, please let me know. So first, this data that came out at the beginning of the year, this is from the last cycle of applicants. And as you can see, this is from matriculants. So these are people that got into medical school. So the average GPA of people that got into medical school, Americans, was 3.54. And the average international student GPA was 3.7. Meanwhile, for MCAT, the average MCAT for Americans was 504, while MCAT was 507. This is based on ACOM, which is the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine. But you can read this in two ways. One is that international students perform better academically, which data has shown that it is true. And two, that medical schools have a higher standard of grades for international students, and hence why people that are accepted in international, accepted in medical schools and are international students, why our averages are so much higher than the American averages. Well, I wouldn't say it's so much higher, but a little higher. So just to keep in mind as you move forward, because those are the first things that when you apply that people see. So as you move forward, just keep in mind, this is very interesting data for us I found doctors to see and discuss. Okay. So introduction about me, that's me on the left there. I was a very chubby baby, just folds and folds and folds. But just, give a little bit of my background. So I was born in Brazil, in Curitiba in 1995. And then I moved to Mexico about a year after. And then I moved back to Brazil. I did a lot of moving in Brazil as well. And then in 2011, I moved to Chile, where I went to high school. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next session. And then in 2015 is when I came to the United States, and I got a bachelor's of public health with a minor in political sciences at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And in 2019, I started medical school at Toracom. So what I want you to take from this image, besides getting a little bit more about me, is that your journey does not have to be linear. That is also me. You can see all the folds. But you saw that my journey took me everywhere. I traveled everywhere, I moved everywhere. I've been through many different educational systems, and at some points I really thought I was not going to be able to become a doctor. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want anything else. I wanted to become a doctor since the age of 5, 6, and I never thought of anything else. So for you, what that means is don't get flustered. I mean, it's okay to get frustrated, but don't beat yourself down if something doesn't go according to plan. It is a very harsh path to take. It's a very long and very demanding path, but it pays off in the end. As long as you know your focus and you know your goals and you just keep going. That is very important. We're all climbing the same mountain. We're just at different sides of it. And we all want to reach that same common peak, which is become a doctor. So just keep that in mind, okay? So now just the life before the US and my experience, coming in the US and why I came to the US. And that is also me. I was not very happy there, but I was a very happy child overall. So you're gonna see a lot of picture babies. Oh, actually a few picture babies every now and then. So baby picture, sorry. So life before the US. First, I want to start with the process and then why the US, because to be honest, sometimes I'm not sure. But the process was pretty harsh as it was. When I moved from Brazil to Chile, I had done my first year of high school in Brazil. And when I moved to Chile, I didn't speak any English. I didn't really speak Spanish anymore because whatever Spanish I learned in Mexico, I had forgotten. So when I got to Chile, I really struggled to adapt. And a lot of schools, high schools, and this is high schools that we're talking about, rejected me. So I was rejected in about 12 to 15 schools in Chile. And I was just really struggling to find a place to continue my education. And at that point, my parents were talking about sending me back to Brazil so I can keep studying there in a public school. But for me, that wasn't really an option. But the thing is, I was also never a good student. My grades were horrible. So, coming from a future physician, that, it's hard, but I was never really a good student. I was very involved in the community and I did a lot of volunteering growing up, but grades wise, that always held me back a little bit. But that struggle led me to be able to buckle down and tell myself, all right, if I'm choosing to stay here, I need to master first these languages. So I sat down, opened YouTube, got a Spanish tutor, and I just taught myself English and Spanish for the first couple of months that I was there. And then after that, I was lucky to get into an international school that accepted me. They held me back a year to teach me English better and Spanish. And then I went on to do the IGCSEs and A levels because it was a British high school. And I'm not sure how many of you here are doing that system, but that was the system that I was in high school. And those are the scores that I use to apply to colleges in the US, in Chile, in England at the time. And then just evaluate where really I wanted to go. Like I said, I was never really a good student. So I was also struggling a little bit to get into college at that point. So that's kind of telling, right? Like I said, life just takes you in many different ways. But throughout high school, I was also very involved. I started a lot of charities. I volunteered every weekend as a math and English teacher in low-income communities. And then from there on, it just became choosing which country I wanted to go based on what my family could afford, because I come from a family of farmers, and we're a very humble family. I was born in a very low-income area of Brazil. So, that process of moving out of the home is mainly by yourself. It's very expensive, and it's very hard, as many of you international students will know. So this was really a joint family decision to decide to come to the US. And also I got a scholarship in Bowling Green. So that helped a lot, right? Financial motivation always speaks volumes in terms of why you do something that you do. But that was a bit of my process of why I came to the US. I think there's also, the media outside kind of glamorizes the US a lot for international folks. So I always had this image of the United States that I really wanted to see and live because of how the media portrayed the US to me growing up. And I also wanted to master my English more and learn a different culture. So those are the biggest factors that brought me to the US after I had gone through all that process in high school, which in and of itself was pretty harsh, I would say, at the time. So now into my medical journey, and that just, what med school is like. I promise you my suturing skills are a lot better than that banana, but that's what I practice with during my first 2 preclinical years. But so moving on to this part, my medical journey started here in the US, really took off in pre-med. Like I said before, I was never a good student, but in college, I did really well. I graduated with a 3.9. I had a lot of volunteering experience. I started the university's chapter of Global Health Brigades. If you're familiar with that, it's an organization that does missions abroad. And I raised a ton of money, probably close to $20,000 in the 2 last years of college, just for that organization. I was involved in Greek life, and that helped me a lot to earn recognition nationally because of leadership and grades. So I had a lot of awards that I could put on my CV. I also had a lot of work experiences. I had 4 different jobs, 3 of them I worked at the same time. I was a tutor, I was a TA, I worked in the International Student Office. So I was really, really active during my pre-med career. Despite everything, beforehand, during pre-med, that's really when it took off. And I told myself, I'm in the US and I'm here alone, and I need to be able to make this happen. And that is the reality for a lot of us, right? Once you're alone and you're in that position, then it's when you really do your best, I would say. So what I want to do here is, as I go through this, is also inform you of things that you should keep in mind. I'm going to tell you about my experience, but these are things that you should really keep in the back of your head as you move forward. Because I had all this volunteering, shadowing, I had a great GPA, I had good letters of recommendation, and then I took my MCAT and I bombed it. Like, I didn't fail it, but I got a really low score. And I'm very open about it with all of my mentees and F1 doctors, because I got a 498, which, as you know, that is the lowest threshold possible. So, even with all that background in college that I did really well, in my MCAT, I still hadn't done that well for myself. Granted, I had only studied for about a month and a half. I still had my TA, my SI job, and my office job, and I was still taking classes because I decided to take a junior year. Bad idea in retrospective. So I really didn't have all that much time to prepare, and what brought me down was cars. And we we can talk about that later as well, if you have any questions on that. But I really tailored my application based on that too. So, and it's really important for you moving forward to do the same. And I'll go into that in the tips section. But then I applied to medical school that same year with that score. I really wanted to just move forward with that because I wanted to graduate college and go straight into medical school, mainly because of the visa timelines. And I didn't want to, have to get an extension or try to get an OPT or CPT. So I just decided to move forward with my application and apply. So I sent an application to 21 different schools. Most of them were DOs, and I'm going to go into the DO versus MD thing. Most of them were DOs, and I did that because I wanted DO. Luckily, DOs do tend to have a lower average MCAT acceptance rate, but I did want to do DO. It's the one part that I've always wanted since I learned about it. So I applied to about 16 DO schools, and the rest were MDs. And then I got 4 interviews, 2 acceptances, and then I came to Toracom in 2019. Again, even with a bad MCAT, I would still be able to get those interviews and acceptances. And sure, I could have gotten into a better school. I could have gotten, relatively speaking, better school because Toro is pretty good. I could have gotten more interviews. I know people, but it's all relative. I know people that got really high scores, but they didn't have the rest of the application and they didn't get into medical school. So with that said, as you move forward, I really want you to think about this and really work on this. Yes, grades are important. Your GPA and your MCAT is very important. But at the same time, these things really make it or break it in your application. I would say that the GPA and grades, they're used as the first step to filter people, but those things are those things that make you stand out. Okay, so your personal statement is the crown jewel of your application, and I took a lot of time to work on my personal statement. I had over like 10 drafts of it, and I worked with my English teacher from college on it, and I took a lot of time to make sure that it was flawless. Also, the description of your activities. You have a section in your application when you have to describe, I believe it's 10 to 15 activities. That is the part where you can expand or things that are in your resume and that you didn't really talk about much, or experiences that were negative for you, but that you somehow turned it positive. So an example, I was part of an organization during college that I struggled a lot with the leadership. I was a treasurer and I really didn't agree how they moved things forward and how they created the events. The organization was kind of stagnant. So I had a lot of conflict in that organization, and I ended up leaving my term early. But I still had it in my resume because it was a good organization. They stood up for a good cause. But in that section of the description of the activities, I explained that I had a lot of conflict. I explained why the conflict arose, but I also explained that what I learned. And I learned more about conflict resolution. I learned more about how to work with other people of different mindsets. And then I applied that to my other organizations that were really successful during college. So really use those areas very well to really expand on who you are and expand on the experiences that are kind of just, glimpsed on in the rest of your application. And then the resume, like I said, work, volunteer, research, shadowing, that is a must. You kind of have to have those. I'd say research less so, mostly depending where you want to go. Some schools are very research heavy, so you might really want to do a lot of research. Some care more about volunteering. Those are all things that you can learn about by reaching out to those institutions. But what I will say when it comes to your resume and building that is do things that you're passionate about. You really don't want to have a lot of resume fillers because the interviewers are very quick to catch those during an interview. If you have a lot of different experiences there and they ask about something that you're not passionate about, odds are that you're not going to be able to talk about it very well or eloquently, and they're going to pick up on that and they're going to realize, and it's not going to look good. It's going to be a red flag in your application. So for instance, research, that is one of the biggest questions that we get at F1 doctors from mentees is how can I get more research? And most of the time people have this conception that research has to be just bench or clinical research. And that is not necessarily true. Like I said, follow your passion. My research, for instance, I did a minor in political sciences. I love politics. I love public health. So my research was devoted into a comparative analysis between the healthcare systems of different countries. And I worked on that for 2 years. I presented it to the honors college in my university. And that was my research project. And that is the research that I went to in my application. And they did ask about it in my interviews. Every single interview they asked about it because they wanted to learn more. It was an interesting topic. So just keep that in mind. Do things that you're truly passionate about as you're building a resume. Don't just do the curriculum fillers, random activities here and there that you think might help you in the long run. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading the questions here. So the GPA in the very first slide, Samantha, was the overall GPA, the cumulative GPA, not the science GPA. Actually, there's a few questions popping up, so I'm gonna leave that to the end. And then the other part is the cosigner. If you're going to medical school in the US, you are going to need a cosigner, most likely. We international students do not qualify for federal loans. So unless you have like $200,000 to pay for medical school, you're gonna need to take private loans or other loans that don't require a cosigner, but that they have really high interest rates. So a cosigner is a person of American citizenship that can co-sign the loans for you. So when you apply for a loan and you get a loan and the loan gets accepted, that cosigner needs to sign it with you before the bank gives it to the university. So that's what a cosigner is. And when I say really work on this is because if you get into medical school and you don't have a cosigner to co-sign on your loans, you're not going to get the loans. If you don't get the loans, you can't pay for medical school, and therefore you're going to be left out of medical school unless you have financial aid. And that's another topic too. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the tips section. I feel like that's going to answer more of your questions. But just keep in mind, this is an option. A lot of schools don't have financial aid. So you have to be talking to other people beforehand while you go through college, just planting that idea of, would you be willing to co-sign for me? I asked my bosses, I asked my coworkers, I asked my friends. I was very lucky that one friend of mine was willing to co-sign, and he's been my co-signer since I started medical school. So lastly on this slide, practice your interview. Make sure before you go into the interview, you practice with someone, just so you can speak more eloquently and you can follow through your ideas and be able to explain your application flaws. And I put flaws in quotations because they're not necessarily flaws. We all have our reasons as to why something goes the way it does. But don't just give an excuse for it when you're interviewing. Make sure that you go full circle. If something bad happened, if you got a bad grade, sure, explain why that happened, but then explain what you learned from it and what you did better in the future that made you succeed in other areas, and how you took that experience to do better in other areas. You really don't want to just give an excuse and end it there. You really want to be able to go full circle into what you learned and how you applied it to other areas. Okay. So just some things to keep in mind there. Fourth, what are your options? And just so y'all know, I do see the questions popping up here, and I will answer them in the Q&A section just so that I can finish the whole thing, okay? Feel free to keep sending the questions in and I'll go through them. So what are your options? A lot of us think it's just MD, and little do we know that there's more options to that. Sure, MD, PhD, and MD, AD are very competitive and very hard because there's less programs that accept international students and there's less programs overall. But starting with DO, which is what I'm doing, which is what I decided I wanted to do, is, DO and MD often get confused, or people don't know much about DO, but DO has the same exact curriculum as MD. So you're learning the same thing, except that DOs also learn OMT, which is osteopathic manipulative treatment. And OMT, essentially what it treats you is to use your hands to diagnose and treat the body in order to improve the body's natural ability of healing. So it's very useful, mainly in the primary care sector, where you can use it in the hospitals or outside the hospitals. But it's very useful because it minimizes the need of medications a lot of times. You can use a lot of those techniques to relieve a lot of musculoskeletal pain, and as well as other conditions. It can, help with anxiety, with walking dysfunctions, and so forth. So that is the biggest difference. DOs have that extra tool that you can use in essentially any setting that you find yourself in. Okay. MDs are, the traditional allopathic schools, the 4-year degree, and that's pretty much it. That's what most people think about when they think of an American doctor, is the MD degree. MD PhD is an MD degree combined with a PhD. So you're doing a PhD. That career, I think, is 7 years. I honestly do not know much about it, but next week, Gopika, who is the co-executive director for F1 Doctors, is going to be speaking next Friday. And she is an MD PhD student. So she can go really into that kind of process and application and tell you a lot more about the MD PhD. Then you have MD JD, which is also an option, which is you do an MD as well as a law degree. There's very, very little programs in the US that accept international students with an MD JD, but that is an option. You end up being a doctor and a lawyer. Normally you're working with health law and alongside with hospitals. So that's just something to keep in mind. Lastly, some programs also do offer master's degrees alongside with their medical degree. DOs and MDs, DO schools and MD schools both have that you can do sometimes a public health or a business degree alongside the medical degree. Okay. So those are the options. Don't limit yourself just thinking that only allopathic schools are good for you. Really learn about the spectrum of options that you can go into so that you increase your chances of getting somewhere. In the end of the day, all of these degrees are going to be called doctor. All of these degrees are going to be working directly with the communities that you live in, and all of them are going to be helping them within the healthcare setting. So really think about that as you move forward, okay? Okay, so now into the tips and resources, and hopefully that clarifies some of the questions that are in the chat. Okay, so tips, some tips. First, put yourself out there. I often say this to my mentees and F1 doctors, because I have a lot of mentees through the organization. And the one thing is put yourself out there. The hardest part is the hardest part you've done already, which is coming to a different country, starting a hard career, a medical career, learning a different language, getting a degree in a different language. That is the hardest thing that you could have done. You left your culture behind, you left your family, and you're in a completely different country pursuing this dream of yours. If you really think about it, it's kind of crazy, but all of you did it, I did it, and that is the hardest thing that you could have done. Everything else is secondary, like just from that one thing, you grew a lot. So use that to really put yourself out there, and don't be scared of using your resources. One example of that is, at one point I was struggling a lot with shadowing, and I used a connection from the university to go to a hospital. And when the shift was over, which was pretty early, it was around noon, I sneaked into the surgery area. I had no business being in the surgery area, but I wanted to see more stuff. So I essentially started stalking the doctors in there and asking for an opportunity to shadow, until one of them took me to the head of the vascular surgery department. And that became a great connection. I became really close friends with her, and she essentially scheduled me with many different doctors and hundreds of hours of shadowing in the surgery department for the last 2 years of college. So that is just one example. Really put yourself out there and be the best you that you can be to promote yourself. Next, medical schools are your biggest resource. I saw some questions here about financial aid and about, loans and this and that. In the end of the day, what I'm giving you here is my experience and my perspective. If you really want to get a concrete and solid answer, the medical schools are going to be the best place for you to get that. We have resources in F1 Doctors, and we have links to possible financial aid areas. But by reaching out to the medical schools, you can get the concrete answers that you need. So if you have questions about financial aid, I recommend that you reach out to the medical schools. Mostly because a lot of times those things change on a yearly basis, depending on how much funding the school gets. So if you have any more specific concerns in that sense, reach out to the schools, mainly while you're in college. And that's a good thing too, because it really puts yourself out there. The schools know who you are, they know what you're looking for, and it helps them remember you throughout the application process. Okay. So next is checking with your home country/embassy. And that's pretty important because we often forget that our home country often has programs to help us. So Brazil, for instance, a while ago, they had programs for people studying in the STEM field in the United States. That program is now ended, but if people are interested, they could contact the embassy and ask what were the options and what were the requirements for application. So if you're having any financial issues, reach out to your embassy in the United States and talk to them to see if they have any programs available that help support you financially as you go into the medical field here. I will say a lot of my mentees that tried it weren't very successful, but we did have some success here and there where they were able to get some help with that. So just really think about that. Next is be yourself. Really, I think I don't have to talk much about that, but really just be, the best version of yourself. Don't try to pretend to be someone else. Interviewers will see right through that when you're sitting there to be interviewed. So just be yourself and have fun with it. It's a stressful, but it's a fun process. So next, have the co-signer conversation early. I explained what the co-signer is, and it's, you really don't want to be stressing out about that like a month or two before you're supposed to start medical school when you're applying for your loans. So start having that conversation during the second or third year of medical school. It doesn't have to be anything concrete, but plant that idea around with your friends or, with their parents if you're close to them, or with your coworkers. Really don't be scared of planting that idea and asking, hey, in the future, would you consider to do this? We don't have to decide now, but I would like to discuss that more when time comes. Just to make sure that you're covering that base really early on, because unfortunately, we live in a society here in the US that is very financially driven, is all for profit. Medical schools are a business in the end of the day. So you really need to have that tuition money. Okay. So have that conversation early. Alternatively, you can look into financial aid options that a lot of schools offer, but not all of them, mainly for international students. A lot of the Ivy schools, I know Stanford does, I know Harvard does, I know Vanderbilt does, but a lot of other schools do not have any sort of financial aid for international students specifically. So like I said, if you have any questions about that, I would say contact the schools. Sometimes that changes, but for the most part, that is something that is harder to come by. So just keep that in mind. Financial aid is existent, it's there, but it's not all the institutions, okay? Next, and I said that before, focus on your passions. Really, when you're building your resume in your professional career, focus on things that you're truly passionate about, things that if the interviewer asks you about, you can sit there and talk for hours, okay? So that you can really portray your passion, your leadership skills, your teamwork skills, all through those experiences, all right? Next, be realistic with yourself. And I say this because, and it's hard to hear because we all want to go to the best school in the world. We all want to graduate the best in our class, and we all want to do really well, right? Medical students are type A students that are very concerned about everything. So it's really important that you're realistic with yourself. So for instance, when I got my 498 score in the MCAT, I knew that I wasn't going to get into Harvard with that score. I wasn't worried. I didn't care because I wanted DO in the first place. But at the same time, I knew that when I was choosing which schools to apply, I would have to be really selective and not spend a ton of money applying to schools that I know I wasn't going to get in, versus schools that I had a better chance based on my curriculum and my activities. So really be realistic with yourself. It's good to dream. It's good to have goals, but sometimes you really need to ground yourself and make sure that you're taking advantage of all of your possibilities, right? And next is plan A, B, C, and D. And by that I mean, in my naiveness, I thought that a lot of people got into medical school straight out of college, and that is not the case for a lot of people. So I was lucky to be able to do that, but at the same time, I was planning into looking into a master's program. I was planning into going back home and trying to study medicine in Brazil. I had all these different things that I was working in the background. And or maybe just do a CPT and OPT, which I really didn't want to at the time. But, I had all these other ideas and things that I could come up with in case I didn't get into medical school. Like I said before, the journey doesn't have to be linear as long as you're consistent with your goal. Life is going to pull you in many different directions, but you got to be sure that you're prepared for when that pull happens and something doesn't go your way, that you have an alternative there to kind of like a lifeline. Okay. And next, some resources. So I put the QR codes here. I have the links here too, but I figured this is helpful. So I asked international students, that is a pretty good resource. You can go there, you can pull your data essentially, and it shows you which places you can potentially apply for loans, which places might offer financial aid, things like that, which schools accept international students at a time. Those are all resources that I didn't have when I started my medical school career. I actually called every single school individually, 140 plus. I spent like 2 days doing that, just trying to, create my own list of that. But that's one of them. F1 Doctors, which is us. Feel free to go to our website. We have a lot of links there that can help you when it comes to loans and financial aid and, mentorship and all of that stuff. You have, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Shemasian Academic Counseling. I'm not sure if they have memberships. I don't think they do. Either way, their blog posts are all free, and he has great resources for international students. He has great posts for international students looking for which schools accept them, what's DO versus MD, why should you do one or the other, and etc. He has really good and well-written posts there. And lastly, AMC and ACOM, which are the American associations for the MD schools and osteopathic schools, respectively. So those are some good resources for you to have. All this, the data or GPA, MCAT that I used in the very beginning, I took it straight from their websites. Those are the actual links for where all that data is found. And it's good for you to know because it gives you an idea of how many international students are applying, how many are getting accepted, where do the students come from normally, where are they going to school. You can see the breakdown of which schools are accepting more international students. You can see all of that based on the data that they release. So if you really want to be proactive about it and make sure that you're applying to schools that have a higher rate of acceptance for international students, maybe going through those reports is a good idea. Okay, I'll leave that. Oops. And then there's the direct links, and that's it. Thank you very much. Let's go through the questions now. What time is it? How much time do I have left? Ahmad or Davina?
We could probably do maybe 10 or 15 minutes of questions if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I saw a question here about shouting. I'm actually going to leave the QR code picture here in case you want to go to those websites. But okay. So someone asked what was the GPA that I applied with. I applied with my GPA from college, which was a 3.9 at the time. So like I said, my GPA was pretty good. My MCAT was the part that kind of let me down a little bit, but I had a really strong application besides that, you know. Someone asked what is shadowing. Shadowing is a non-paid position. You're essentially just following a doctor around and observing them do the work. So you're not getting paid for that. That is all volunteered. And schools normally expect you to have at least like 50 hours of shadowing, at least very minimum, just so that you have a better idea of what is the profession of a doctor. And also it's good because when you go into the interview, you can say, yeah, no, I was shadowing a doctor and I really liked how he treated his patients and I hope to do this in the future and blah, 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 blah. You know, like it really helps you build a better image of the medical profession. So that is what shadowing is. Co-signer, I explained that through the presentation. If it's not clear still, just let me know again. So I can go through the other questions. Yash said, if you don't get a co-signer and you're applying for private loans, you probably won't get the loan, and that's going to hinder you from getting into medical school. So it's very important that you look into that, unless you manage to get financial aid or a scholarship. If I do my undergrad in my home country, but I'd like to make master's in the US, could you please give an idea as well? The procedure, like, Mahek, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. In that scenario, you know, I would say reach out to the institutions that you're trying to do your master's at. That is a different process than medical school or anything like that in general. A lot of times, from my understanding, they require you to take the TOEFL to, you know, for English proficiency. Sometimes some institutions have their own internal examinations. But I would say reach out to those programs and universities that you want to do a master's in and see what is it that they need. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to one of our mentors at F1 Doctors. Yeah, shout out to best practice for interviews. For that, you really want to get two people, at least two people, to sit down across the table from you and interview you. That's pretty much it. You can find online lists of like what are the most common asked questions by interviewers for medical school, and you can just ask people to go through those. So a lot of our mentors, myself included, would provide that to our mentees in F1 Doctors. So if you want to reach out to one of our mentors when you are around interview time, feel free to do that. We can try to set that up, or just reach out to our mentor relationships directors and we can try to set that up so that you can have two of our mentors interview you so you can practice. And that's for everyone here. Everything that we do at F1 is for free. So just keep that in mind, okay? Mahi Nord, how can I find universities that provide financial aid? We do have a link in our website that shows some institutions that have financial aid, but I would say definitely reach out to them because a lot of times, like I said, that changes every year. I do not know if MDJD exists in Canada. I know very little about Canada, sorry. Shadowing is not a paid activity. Oh, and keep that in mind. This is a good point. You said in my country it is. So here it's not. And if you do shadowing abroad, that's fine. But the thing is, a lot of times schools want to be able to corroborate those stories. So if you did shadowing abroad and you're counting that towards your hours, you want to make sure that you also shadow an American doctor in the US. Because if they do have any questions or anything and they want to reach out to that physician, they are going to be able to in the US. So just keep that in mind as well, okay? Ashna, CPT and OPT are essentially extensions to your F1 visa. That's something you can talk about with your DSO, your designated student officer at your university. But essentially what you get is you get a year extension if you get a job. So say you want to start scribing and that's a paid position. And you know, our visa limits us for 20 hours a week. If you want to start scribing and work more than that, you can apply for a CPT and get that done. And then your F1 visa is extended for a year. For STEM, you can extend it to another year. And that way you can work as a scribe and get that paid position and paid experience as well. Recommendation for research programs. I would say that's very institution dependent as well. It depends on the kind of research you want to do. Alanis, if I would say also ask Gopika next week when she presents, because she's MD, PhD. She's done a lot of research. A lot of my publications are mostly case studies, so it's not full-on research, but I say definitely ask her as well. Is online chatting accepted by med schools? That is a great question that I don't know the answer to, mainly because of COVID. You know, a lot of things changed with COVID. A lot of people were not being able to get shadowing or scribing or experiences or anything like that. So I would say definitely reach out to your schools or talk to your advisors, because COVID definitely changed a lot of things. As far as I'm concerned and that I know, that's a no, but things might have changed because of that. Okay. Currently a medical student in another country. How can I get to the US to involve in research programs? Nicola, if you want to ask Gopika that next week as well about research, that would be good. As far as I know, if you're a medical student in another country and you want to come practice in the United States, you would essentially come as an IMG after you graduated medical school there. And that is a whole other process on itself. You would have to retake the board exams here and do all that here. But in terms of getting research here, I'm not entirely sure. I do know that I have mentees that came here for research from other countries, and they got a work visa and they now work in laboratories or clinics here just doing research, but they got an H-1B or J-1 visa for that. But that is also dependent. Is Zero harder than MD? I'd say it's all relative. Medical school is hard overall, and it's a lot of studying, a lot of hours put into studying. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, honestly. I would say it's probably equally as hard. If anything, we have the added component of OMT because the curriculum is the same. We're learning the same things. I would say depending on what your specialty is, it might be harder to be in DO schools because a lot of times you have to take the board exams that is made for MDs as well as the board exams for DOs, which is required for us to take. So you have to take USMLE and COMLEX if you want to go into really competitive schools, residency, sorry. So if anything, DO schools can be harder because of that aspect, but I would say just more stressful, not necessarily harder. But things change now. You know, the first step of COMLEX and USMLE is now pass fail, so that takes a lot of the stress away. It's no longer scored. So more information going to Canadian med schools. I'm sorry, Maria, I have no idea about Canadian schools, but we do have Canadian mentees in our website. If you want to check that out, actually, I'm going to just show the website really quickly here, just so that people can have an idea. So if you can still see my screen, this is our website. And if any of you have any specific questions about specific countries or anything, you can come to our Find Mentor page. And then you can filter the mentors by country as well, okay? So if you have any questions about Canada, that's wrong. I know for a fact that we have Canadian mentors, so I'll look into that. But you can filter other countries and just figure that out, okay? So yeah, and you can go into our resources, look into the finances part, which is very important. Media, we have a podcast as well that, you know, we have mentors and board members talking about their experience. So I really encourage you to go through this and see everything that we have here for you, because we organize this for free. A summer program is crucial in my application for medical school. I would say not necessarily crucial, but they're definitely helpful. Anything that adds experience to your application and that you like it, I would say it's helpful. When do you suggest we apply after high school or while studying? Well, if it's after high school and you want to come to the US, you need to go to college. So you would have to go through college and then apply to medical school. You can't go to medical school without college in the US. So, and then you decide to apply either junior year or senior year. If you apply senior year of college, then you would have to take a gap year because of the way that the academic year works here in the United States. And Yeah, that's pretty much it. Does anyone have any other questions? Are people asking for the link, the drive for what the presentation?
Yeah, probably either the presentation or like our own personal Google Drive that we use just for the entire summer program.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? I hope I was able to answer your questions. Like I said, Gokika is going to be here next week as well, I believe, and she's going to be able to talk a lot more about research and about the MD PhD portion of things. If you're really interested in the other aspects of it, feel free to reach out to me or to anyone through our website. F1 Doctors will be more than happy to help. Because no, I am currently studying for my board exam, so might be delayed a little bit in answering to some emails. Okay.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for coming to speak to us today. Right now, if everyone wouldn't mind giving him a Zoom round of applause just to thank him for his time for being here and to wish him luck on his board exams and prepping for that. We've also sent a Google form out in the chat. If you'd like to fill that out and write a thank you message for him, we'll be sending all of your responses right over to him. So we would really appreciate it if you all fill that out. And Matthias will send that to you as soon as everyone gets the responses in.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And good luck, everyone. And I hope you all achieve your goal and get where you want to. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. All right, perfect. So today, before we hop right into our workshop, we have released a research symposium prompt. It's in the Google Drive, but I know that that might be a little tricky to get to right now, especially if you're in the session. So I'm going to send a link out in the chat as well. We have Alex here today. He's our co-director of research, and he's going to be introducing himself and kind of taking you through the research symposium document as well, the prompt, and we will have time for a couple of questions, not too many, because we have to go to our workshop afterwards. But Alex is active on Slack, so if you'd like to ask him some questions afterwards, if you want to post any questions in the channel about the symposium, we do anticipate a lot of questions. We get them every year. You're more than welcome to ask him, but otherwise we'll let him take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. Again, I am the co-director of research here at MedStem Powered. And I'm going to go through the research symposium document today. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let me know if you guys can see that. I can get like a quick thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Thanks. So this is the document for the research symposium. And all the information that you'll need for this summer's project is going to be on this document. And again, Davina mentioned that you guys have access to this document, so don't feel too pressured to take notes or anything. You'll have access to this, so you can refer to it anytime you want. So this is, again, the document that has all the information that you'll need for this project. And for this summer, our project is centered around the theme of climate change, which is obviously a very pressing issue. But just as a little recap, so climate change refers to the process by which our natural environment, our world is changing. And so since the 1800s, climate change has primarily taken the form of global warming, where the Earth is rising in average temperature due to human activities. And so since this is MedStem powered and it is a medical organization, we're going to be focusing on climate change's consequences on human health. And so, for example, droughts have affected our ability to grow food in certain regions, putting people at risk of famine and malnutrition. So we're going to be looking at these different effects on human health for this project. And in terms of the actual prompt for the research symposium, what you guys are tasked to do is to devise a solution that will help address and mitigate some of these health complications brought about by climate change. And so the prompt mentions that you can consider these details below. So you have a list of this section goes into more detail about what kind of specific effects climate change has on human health. And so you can look at this section under details to consider to try to determine what kind of symptoms, or not symptoms, what kind of effects you want to help address. And also, if you look at the prompt, it says that your solution may be a biomedical, engineering, public health, political or legal, or other intervention. So you have a broad range of categories that you can tailor your solutions around. So they can be a medical device under the biomedical category, or it can even be like a political policy or public health policy. So you have a lot of free range and a lot of freedom to tailor your solution to whatever you would like it to be. The prompt also mentions, just keep in mind that your solutions will be partially judged on their uniqueness and just how inventive they are. So keep that in mind when you're designing your solution. You don't want to be just copying what's already out there. And so, as I mentioned, under this details to consider section, there are a bunch of different information about how climate change has affected human health. And so if you read through this, you'll see that some of the effects can be like air pollution or increased amount of allergens in this paragraph. So there's a lot of different things you can work with. And I would like to mention that you can feel free if you find something, or if you find an effect on human health that's not mentioned here, you can use that as well. Obviously, you're not limited to just what's said here, but just remember that, and we'll talk about this later in the requirements section, but just remember that everything needs to be cited. So make sure you have evidence to back up the existence of whatever effect that you want to talk about if it's not listed here. But yeah, so in terms of the actual requirements, it's all listed under the requirements section, obviously. So for the first big main one, your solutions have to address and mitigate at least 1 to 2 of the effects of climate change on human health. So just make sure that you're looking at least 1 to 2 of these effects and tailoring your solution around addressing them and helping to kind of mitigate this effect. And so we would like to mention that your solution should be probably very limited in its focus. So that's why we suggest at least 1 to 2 of the effects, because addressing everything might be challenging. So you really want to focus and narrow down your topic on a specific effect, just so that is a little easier on yourself. And obviously addressing all effects is going to be really challenging. And so your solutions also have to have a specific problem statement or a statement of need. So that goes back to the idea that what your project is should be very specific, because you want to have a specific thing that you're addressing. And your problem statement or statement of need can't just be addressing climate change as a whole. It has to be a very specific effect on human health. And there are a bunch of different questions on these sub bullet points here that you can use to help guide your thinking, and especially answer these questions on your submission, your final submissions, to make sure that you're fulfilling this requirement here of having a problem statement or statement of need. Again, one of these sub bullet points says that your solution needs to be unique. So how is your approach unique? And if it has been done before, how will you reinvent and innovate it? Keep that in mind. Again, you're going to be judged partially on how unique your project is. So yeah. And feel free to dive into existing research on climate change and potential ways to tackle this issue. As we kind of mentioned, climate change is a very pressing issue. So there's a lot of existing information out there. But just remember, again, you can't just kind of copy and paste the solution that's already given. Just make sure there's some unique aspect to it. And for the next requirement, so what makes this a research symposium or a research project is that your solutions have to be justified by scientific data. And that goes for anything that you put on your final submission that is not your own original thoughts or work. You have to justify it by scientific data and scientific evidence. And again, you have a lot of sub bullet points here that will help you think about what specific things to put on your final submission to help justify your work. For example, this first one here says, provide evidence-backed arguments for how your solution will help address your chosen effects. So please provide like what scientific data or what scientific evidence led you to design the solution in the way you have it designed. And also provide what kind of data will demonstrate that your solution is effective. So again, we really want to stress this. Please provide evidence and scientific data to back up all of your arguments and to back up all of your justifications for your project. And then there are other like different things that you can be thinking about. So like what are possible tests and trials that can be used to test your solution if you were actually to build this out in the real world, and what kind of data that you want to get out of your testing. So again, just really focus on having data and having evidence to back up everything that you're saying and the design of your solution. Also, you want to address the pros and cons of your solution and your project. Again, sub bullet points here that will help you think about these things. So like things like how would you go about designing your project? How does your solution actually work? Make sure you explain like what it actually is, and its pros and cons. And you can also think about things like social and ethical challenges, and these questions here. Some more logistical things. You have to have a minimum of 5 reputable scientific sources. So when we say reputable scientific sources, we mean like sources that are from credible places. So you can find scientific sources like scientific papers and articles all on the internet, but we want you guys to find these things from like credible places. So things like PubMed or any official scientific database that has scientific articles in it, or scientific journals. So things that are credible and not just some random sources on the internet. You are encouraged to use these scientific sources again, or you're actually required to use these scientific sources to support your project and your solutions. And all sources must be cited in MLA format on your poster that you'll be submitting, or on whatever submission that you're going to be providing. Pretty standard for that. And then this project must be completed in groups with a minimum of 4 people and a maximum of 10. So you guys have Slack or whatever platform you works best for you to form those groups. But I believe that Davina and other people at Meds Empowered, if you finding it difficult to create a group, we'll definitely help you out there if you need help with that. So don't stress or don't fret if you can't really find a group in time. But yeah, okay. And then in terms of submissions, there's going to be a link here on the document that you'll have access to submit your projects. But your projects can take the form of a presentation, so like a slideshow, a pre-recorded video, a document, or any other like visuals or graphics, or anything else. Just make sure that you email this MedStem Powered email for approval. Again, we want you guys to have the freedom to do whatever works best for you and your project. But make sure that you submit it at this link that will be up, or that will be updated on this doc soon, by Friday, July 29th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And also, you are encouraged to present your submission live during the actual research symposium, which is going to be taking place on Saturday, July 30th at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So if you want to do so, you will be given the option to, and we actually really encourage you to present it live. But keep in mind that since we do have limited time, we might not be able to view all presentations live. But if that happens to be the case, there's going to be a platform where you can record your presentation and upload it so everyone can still see and watch it as we would view it live. Okay, and then this information here at the bottom is just information on the research symposium. But yeah, again, you guys will have access to this document, so you can refer to everything that we've said so far. But I think I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat to see if there's any questions. Any questions that haven't been answered. Okay, so I think the only question that might not have been answered is, do you have to be in a team or can we be alone? We do say that you do have to be in a group, again, with a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 10 people. But again, don't stress out about not having, or of not having found a group. We'll definitely help you out if that is the case, to form groups of people that haven't made groups on their own. So yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. And again, if any of you have questions for Alex afterwards and you want to like message him on Slack, or if you want to ask any of us in the channels that we have open for you all on Slack or on email, you're more than welcome to do so. Alex will be there to help, answer questions. You can always email us. The rubric will be updated. So right now, the only thing that's in the drive, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex or Ahmad, is the symposium document. What we're going to be uploading later is the rubric and also a couple of previous submissions. So that way you can kind of see what some successful, awarded presentations have looked like in the past. You can kind of get an idea for what it is we're actually looking for. And we'll also, the link to our research symposium from last year is actually on our YouTube channel. So if you want to watch all of those presentations, you're more than welcome to. And if you know like which groups got speaking awards, you can watch those specific presentations as well. But again, none of that is a requirement. It's just if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to. But otherwise, thank you so much, Alex, for coming to present that here today. Again, please reach out to Alex if you have any questions. You can reach out to us, and we'll be responding to lots of questions throughout the weekend and at any other point in time too. But otherwise, thank you so much, Alex. And now we'll be moving on to our workshop led by Ahmad today.
Hi, I hope everyone's doing well. If you guys don't know, I'm one of the directors here at Medicine Empowered, and I'm going to be leading a medical practices and surgical procedure workshop today. The chat is open for any questions you can send to me or Divina, and we can get to those as soon as we can. So we will start now. Okay. So this is just kind of showing a sample timeline of getting into medical school, becoming a doctor, or going into the medical field. This is, again, like Mr. Matthews said today, it's not linear. It doesn't have to be linear. Everyone has their own path of getting into medical school, but this is kind of just a timeline. So you will, after high school, you'll do your 4 years of undergraduate studies. And this is where you have to take the required pre-medical courses such as bio and calc, chemistry, English, psychology, sociology. And these are the courses that you have to take to even be able to apply to medical school. So it's important that if you are going to apply to a medical school, that you do a pre-medical like college career path so you can get those prerequisites in. So if you know you're going to go to medical school, it's important that you do these prerequisites. And if maybe you decided you want to go to medical school your 3rd or 4th year, that might make you have to take extra gap years to get on those science requirements. But even if you're an international student, you have to be able to take these undergraduate career courses. So if you finish your university but you want to come to the US and study undergrad here for a few years and get your science requirements in, that is an option available. And I believe I did see a pathway kind of on F1 Doctor's website that kind of explains this more clearly. So yeah, so after you do your 4 years of undergrad, or you finish the undergraduate degree courses, you go into either grad school, or you can apply right into medical school, or you can take a few gap years, work on shadowing, do research, do some personal life things, and then apply to medical school. Or after you finish your undergrad, you can apply to medical school right away. And after you've finished your 4 years of medical school, you can intern at hospitals and begin your residency. And from there, after you complete your residency, which is kind of when you're like a medical professional, such as an attending, will kind of walk you through certain procedures and stuff, then you can subspecialize into other fields of medicine. So yeah, this is kind of a sample timeline. You can take accelerated pathways. This is like BSMD programs that kind of put your undergrad and medical school together. But yeah, there are multiple pathways that you can do, but this is kind of just one common one. Again, it's not linear. You can have various, ways of getting into medicine. It doesn't have to be this exact pathway. So once you finish medical school, you can specialize in there's about 135 specialties that you can choose from. So after you finish medical school, you can choose to specialize in pediatrics, correct? And this will take around about 4 years. And you can further subspecialize in neonatal perinatal medicine. That's another 3 years. So you can continue to subspecialize until you find whatever fits your heart the best, and then you can go from there even further to pediatric cardiology. So there's always ways so that you can specialize in medicine. So kind of do a question here: is becoming a doctor the only way to make an impact in medicine? I know the answer, you guys can put in the chat, but no. That's not the only way that you can make an impact in medicine. You can go down the route of becoming a scientific researcher, a physician assistant, a genetic counselor. A scientific researcher basically is a person that makes the breakthroughs in medicine. It's the person that finds the cures in medicine. So they're also, that's an option that you can take, go the research route. There's also physician assistant. This is pretty much similar to becoming a doctor, but there are a few little differences in there. But they, again, examine, diagnose, and treat patients. And there is a separate school that you apply to. It's PA school. So I didn't have much information about that, but if you wanted more research about that, I can provide some resources, in the advice column if you guys choose to ask. And genetic counselors, this person or this professional gives information about genetic diseases and how they might affect families. So we're going to do a little race. I don't want to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm going to kind of give you a description about a field in medicine, and your responsibility is to type in the chat as fast as you can, what this specialty is or what this field in medicine is. But please make sure to type in the chat after I finish reading the description, so you can kind of, not get a head start of someone who is still reading. So we'll begin that there. I'll open the chat and then we can do that there. So this specialty pertains to the nerves and nervous system. They diagnose and treat conditions and diseases involving the brain, spinal cord, peripheral nerves, the autonomic nervous system, and blood vessels. So what do you guys think that is? Neurology. I think the first person to get it, if I'm not incorrect, is Abdul Tawab Rafait. So good job. You were the first person to get that. But yeah, everyone's saying pretty much the correct answer. So yep, it is neurology. This is a specialty that pertains to the nerves and nervous system. Again, I also listed some subspecialties for you. So again, you can specialize even further. And these are some subspecialties that you can get into. And I've listed them for pretty much all of the other medical professionals or careers or specialties. So you can take a look into that further as well. So this specialist in this field works with patients that have allergies or diseases of the respiratory tract or immune system. So, asthma, food allergies, immunodeficiencies. What specialty deals with that? And guys, good job. Immunology. I'm seeing the correct answer. I think Yomana Taha was the first person. So sorry if I'm butchering your names. I'm trying to mess up. Definitely correct. It's that one. It's immunology. So allergies and immunologies, these professionals work with patients that have, diseases in the respiratory tract and the immune system. Great job. So this professional helps care for patients before, during, and after surgery by sedating the patient. So this professional also puts a patient to sleep before surgery and ensures that they are asleep. What professional is that? Anesthesiology. Y'all are really smart. Look at y'all. Slay. Okay, Salam, you were the first person to get. Oh, wait. I think, yeah, Salam and Sumaira. So great job. Again, this is the field of anesthesiologies, and there are also some subspecialties such as critical care medicine, hospice and palliative care, and pain medicine that an anesthesiologist can choose to specialize in. So this is a healthcare professional that treats adults and pediatric patients with disorders of the skin, hair, and nails. This also includes skin cancer, tumors, diseases, and they can perform kind of superficial procedures. Good job, guys. I see dermatology. Sarah Hassan, good job. Okay, dermatology. Again, these are the professionals that deal with disorders in the skin, hair, and nails. And yeah, there are also different subspecialties you can go in for dermatology as well, such as pediatric dermatology. So these professionals are trained. Make sure you wait until I finish saying my description. So this professional diagnoses patients through X-rays, sound waves, ultrasounds, and MRI techniques. Great job. I see the right answer. So y'all really know what y'all doing. So Salam, again, great job. You were the first person to type that in. But good job. You guys are getting it right. So diagnostic radiology or radiology pretty much are the professionals that are treated to diagnose patients with X-rays, sound waves, ultrasounds. And again, you can specialize in a lot of different varieties of radiology, such as, emergency radiology, pediatric radiology. So yeah, there are a lot of ways to make a career out of this. So how about a professional that provides care for adults and pediatric patients in emergent situations? So these are like whenever you're in the emergency department. What type of medicine is that? What type of professional is that? Good job. Emergency medicine. Mahik, great job. Emergency medicine. Yeah, this physician deals with patients in the emergency setting. And again, you can self-specialize in that field as well. You can do pain medicine, pediatric emergency medicine. So there are a lot of ways you can go with emergency medicine training. So how about this? Physicians that treat diseases of the heart, blood, kidney, joints, digestive system, so major organs of, adults, adolescents, and patients. What professional is this? So cardiology, okay. This is major organs, not only cardiology. I think I'm seeing it, but this is heart, blood, kidney, so major organs in the body. I think I'm starting to see the right answer now. It's internal medicine. Great job. I think the first person to get that was a lot of cardiologists, not cardiology. We'll get to cardiology, I think. So Mahik, great job. Internal medicine. So this physician treats diseases of the major organs in the body, and there again you can go into many subspecialties in internal medicine, kind of the basic or main specialties. So yeah. So how about a physician that treats hereditary disorders caused by genetic defects and also serves as a consult for patients and their families? No. Geneticist, I see that, correct, geneticist. So this is genetic defects, geneticist. I think the first person to get that was Arnav. Great job, geneticist. So this professional uses radioactive materials to diagnose and treat diseases, including hypothyroidism. So they're using radioactive medicine or radioactive materials. Endocrinologist, okay. I think Arnav is correct. This is going to be nuclear medicine. So you're using nuclear radiologists use radioactive materials to diagnose and treat diseases. So great job. Correct. So this professional is someone who cares for associated disorders of the reproductive system for females and other individuals, and can take care of pregnant individuals, oncology surgery. Good job. I see that. OBGYN, great job. Rajhavi Guhan, great job. So OBGYNs care for this. So again, there are also further subspecialties. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through the rest without the quiz, but I'm just going to kind of share some other subspecialties some other specialties or some other ways you can get involved in medicine. So if you are someone who deals with the eyes or eye-related problem, that's called ophthalmology. And again, you can further subspecialize in many subspecialties in ophthalmology. But ophthalmology is it's a professional that is pertaining to the eyes, surgical care of the eyes and vision-related problems. So pathology is pretty much it's a medical professional that deals with the nature of diseases and runs clinical tests to kind of examine tissues and stuff. So again, there's so much you can go down the route of pathology, hematology, immunopathology. So they deal with the nature of diseases. And pediatrics, so this is someone who, a medical professional that works with patients from their infancy to their adolescence and can diagnose childhood diseases. And there are many subspecialties you can do in pediatrics, but they really work with kids. Physical medicine and rehabilitation. So these patients work with disabilities for the brain, spinal cord, nerve, and they kind of work to improve patient quality of life overall. Instead of like medical cures, it's more of like, working with the patient holistically. Preventative medicine, on the other hand, is working to, such as like, somebody a professional that works to prevent disease. So this can be someone in public health, correct? So clinical medicine, biostatistics, as well as epidemiology. So they are preventative medicine, so preventing medicine. So yeah, preventing diseases. So yeah. psychiatry. So psychiatry deals with, it's a career that involves like, mental health and connection between genetics, emotion, and mental illness. And there are many subspecialties you can take if you want to become a psychiatrist. There's community psychiatry, emergency psychiatry, child psychiatry. So they deal with kind of the mental health and connection between genetics in individuals. So then surgeon. So you can specialize in many fields in surgery, but surgeons, kind of deal with a certain area in the body and they, perform surgery. So this could be oral surgery, plastic surgery, general surgery, pediatric surgery, thoracic surgery, cardiothoracic surgery. So there's very many ways you can go into surgery, but again, you would do your residency, then you would do a fellowship, and then you can specialize even further in surgery. So there's a lot of ways you can get into surgery or perform surgery. So common procedures in medicine. I wanted to spend a few minutes going through some common procedures that you would do if you're in a hospital or if you were a surgeon or if you were a doctor. Some common procedures that you might have hardly heard of, but we'll kind of go into that right now. So phlebotomy. So phlebotomy is a procedure in which a needle is used to take blood from a vein. And this is usually done in a laboratory setting, but it's also done in the ER. So when a phlebotomist is, phlebotomists are really important in medicine because they allow the doctor to see kind of the stats of the patient. So for instance, if a phlebotomist draws a CBC is a complete blood count, right? This will show the white blood count in a patient, right? And this can determine if an infection is present. There's so many other indicators that your blood is so important, and it can show cholesterol. There's so much that a doctor can diagnose just using the blood. So it's a really important procedure that needs to be done. And usually it is done on the hand. There are other ways to perform phlebotomy, but I'm just going to kind of briefly introduce it through the hand today. You can do finger sticks, you can do it through other veins in the body, but the main way it's performed is on your hand in this antecubital fossa area. And pretty much the vein preference is if you feel your arm, a vein is usually really spongy. It can be harder to feel, but it takes a lot of practice. And you usually will, if you feel around your area, in this area right over here, the antecubital fossa, you can kind of feel some of your veins. So if you were a phlebotomist, you would pretty much have a few order of draw. So preferred veins are to use the medial veins, the cephalic and basilic, and the preferred vein is based on amount of nerves that are present in that certain area. So in the medial cubital area, you'll have like less tendency to hit a nerve. And if you hit a nerve, that can be very detrimental. So it's important that phlebotomists are able to, kind of vision, because you can't see inside the patient. So you have to be very careful, and you want to stay away from the basilic because the basilic is near the most nerves. So it's the most, you don't want to draw it unless you really, really have to. So whenever a phlebotomist will insert a needle into the patient, right, it is done at a 15 to 30 degree angle with the surface of the arm. And you kind of really have to be very careful when you insert it because you can hit. So the vein is, you can feel when you practice, whenever you go into medicine, when you practice drawing your arm, you will feel as soon as you hit a vein, you'll feel like this pressure that will go back, and your tube that you are using to draw the blood will immediately fill up, and you'll see that you hit a vein. Sometimes if you go too deep or you don't go deep enough, you won't get blood, or you won't get blood at all, or you can hurt the patient. So it's really important that you are really careful when you draw, but if you insert at this angle, you're able to really get the right method. And as soon as the blood is drawn, so you will always use tourniquet. So tourniquet will kind of restrict the blood flow in the area. You will put your needle in. You usually use a needle that's like 21 gauge needle, and you'll put it in the arm of the patient. You will put your tube inside, and the tube will, if you did it correctly, the tube will automatically fill because it's an evacuated system. So once the tube is filled with blood, you will take the blood off. You always want to invert the blood. You always want to invert the blood just to make sure everything mixes properly, because in the tubes, there are certain additives that mix with the blood to prevent coagulation and stuff like that. So you'll mix it, and then you'll put it and get it tested down to the department, the laboratory scientists that do that. So, and once you finish the patient, once you've drawn their blood, you will usually take the needle out, put gauze on top of it just to make sure that the bleeding doesn't form a hematoma, and then you will dispose of the needle in a sharps container. So It is a pretty simple procedure, but it definitely does take practice to make sure that you get in the right area in the body and you get it in the right vein. So if you don't aim for the vein correctly, it can be very dangerous and it can hurt nerves. So it does take practice to get perfection. So if anyone has questions about phlebotomy or has, wanted some resources, I am a certified phlebotomist, so I can definitely help with that. So an appendectomy. An appendectomy is a surgeon who makes, an incision in the lower right side of the abdomen, and it's used whenever your appendix needs to be removed, and the wound is closed with stitches. So this is kind of just an overview of how it looks. We'll get into the specifics in a second. Just know that, you have, when you do make, we'll get into that in a second. So whenever a surgeon is going to do an appendectomy, they have to first figure out, where the lower area, right section of the abdomen. We'll study the anatomical position in our anatomy and physiology workshop, but pretty much it's just for now, if it's in the lower right section of the abdomen, and an incision is made that is less than about 3 inches in length. After the incision is made, the surgeon will do like an internal examination of the patient, kind of point out, identify all the organs that are there, and check for any diseases or abnormalities. Afterwards, once this pre-examination is done, the appendix is kind of located, brought up, and is removed from the surface of the body. Again, it is separated, and then any surrounding tissue that needs to be, put back in. Then after the appendix is removed, it is closed and returned back to the abdomen. Then, sutures are done and muscles are sewn back together. This actually is like a surgical method, but I've heard that nowadays there's also laparoscopic procedures that do it like without a surgeon even needing to open your appendix, your lower right abdomen up. So it is cool, all the innovations currently being made in these procedures. So thoracotomy is also a medical surgical practice that you'll hear often. So this is when kind of a cut is made between the ribs to see and reach the lungs or other organs in the chest or thoracic region. And I'll tell you guys the procedure in a second, but this is usually done whenever the surgeon needs to access the lung, and this could be to take care of any abnormal growth on the lungs, reinflating a collapsed lung, taking out a blood clot tumor or like the lymph node, repairing your heart, repairing your diaphragm. So anything in the thoracic area region, a thoracotomy is usually performed. So as you can see, the surgeon will make a cut over here, both sides, and will open it up, and then he has the view of these major organs, and he can do what he needs to do then. And then kind of the procedure takes a total of about 3 to 4 hours. And again, surgeons will cut around 6 inches long on your left or right side, just below the tip of your shoulder blade. So in this region over here. So once surgeon has reached the desired ribs, they will cut even further until they have enough room to work. So once this procedure is finished, surgeons will place about 2 tubes in. One which will drain, fluid or air that may be built up into the chest, and another that will let your medical team give you medicine. So there are tubes that are placed after this procedure. Another procedure that you hear is incubation. So an incubation is when a patient is placed into, if a patient isn't able to breathe properly or their airway is obstructed, this procedure helps move air in and out of the lungs. This process can save someone's life when they aren't able to breathe on their own. And again, if there's an airway obstruction or they're in cardiac arrest and they're not able to breathe properly, an incubation, a patient can be incubated. So an endotracheal tube is inserted into the airway down the windpipe. A laryngoscope is used to kind of clear and look at the larynx so the tube is inserted correctly, and that's how we that's how you incubate a patient. There's some really nice, some very educational, interactive videos on YouTube that you can see when getting performed, and they're pretty cool as well to see how the physician or medical professional is able to kind of get down there, and how like the laryngoscope is usually attached to a monitor, and whenever the laryngoscope is put down, you can see the whole pathway, the whole, the esophagus and the trachea, and the medical professional can easily place this tube down. So a free skin graft. So a skin graft is used whenever is used for repairs of holes and defects obtained from different parts of the body. So graft is kind of obtained from a new area. So if you need to get your skin, if you need to get like a graft in this area, you will get the free graft is usually taken from a patch of skin or something will be taken from a different part of the body and put on there. So it's usually taken separately from a distinct part of the body. So does anyone know which medical instrument is used to take a skin graft? I'll look in the chat. Intubation, yes. I think I might have put incubation. Okay, I see. Intubation, correct. Yes. Scalpel. So a free skin graft is an instrument uses a dermatome. It's a hard word, a pretty hard word for me to say, but dermatome is kind of a surgical instrument that is producing the slices of the skin from the donor area. So that is how a free skin graft is performed. So a dermatome is used. And then lastly, I'll just kind of review MRI versus CT scan. So MRIs stands for a magnetic resonance imaging. And kind of this imager uses radio waves and strong magnets to create, views of the bones. And this is ideal if, a medical professional or surgeon or doctor needs to look at an in-depth look at your tissues or organs. So an in-depth view a patient will probably the medical professional will probably use an MRI. A CT scan, on the other hand, stands for computer tomography, and it's also referred to a CAT scan. CT and CAT scan mean pretty much the same thing. And this also pretty much shows really detailed images and at multiple cross-sections of the body. CT scans use radiation while MRI does not. That's an important difference to know. And CT scans are quick and non-invasive, and are preferred in emergent situations. So that's when a medical professional might use a CT scan compared to an MRI. But an MRI, as I'll show you in the next slide, will give you a much detailed image, a much more detailed view compared to a CT scan. What other differences can you guys see? No. So yeah, pretty much, I don't know if you guys can see anything else, but again, it's much clearer, correct? If you compare these both images, an MRI scan and a CT scan, an MRI is much more detailed and much more specific and clear compared to a CT scan. So yeah. I think that is about it for today. Davina, did you want to take over? Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go through a quick interactive. Because it's past 10:30, you're not obligated to stay if you do have to head out. But if you'd like to stick around for our Kahoot, you're more than welcome to. It shouldn't take too long. There are only 10 questions, and they should be about maybe 20 seconds each. Unfortunately, I do think that for this Kahoot as well, there's a limit on players. So we're kind of going to run it the same way we did last time and, have you respond with what you think the answer is in the chat. But first, we can also give Ahmad a Zoom round of applause for running an awesome workshop on medical practices and procedures and for doing such a wonderful job. And if you have any questions for Ahmad about his workshop, you can message him. And his workshop is already in the Google Drive. So if you want to download that, you're more than welcome to. It's there. You can check out the Research Symposium doc. If we don't see you again until our next session, just keep in mind that we don't have a session on Monday. I know that today is actually Canada Day, and then it's the 4th of July, which is a US holiday on Monday. So we just decided not to have a session on Monday to give you all a break, to give you all, a nice long weekend so you can rest, relax, spend some time with your family. So you're more than welcome to, take that break. Please do. We don't have a session on Monday. Our next session is actually going to be next Wednesday. And so if you'd like to join us again next Wednesday, that would be great. Again, attendance is mandatory, but we don't have too many other updates. In regards to the research symposium, we're going to be posting some messages soon, so that if you'd like to find some group members, you're more than welcome to. Again, you're not restricted to find group members only in the international cohort, but if you would like to, you're more than welcome to, find some national group members, etc. So you're more than welcome to do that. You can message us with, any questions. But if we don't see you until our next session next Wednesday, we hope you have a lovely longer weekend. Get lots of rest. Email us if you have any questions, message us, and we'll see you then. But otherwise, we will get started with our Kahoot. Also, I do know that Alex said that groups are mandatory for the research symposium. We made groups mandatory last year, but we're not going to make them mandatory this year because some people have a lot of time zone conflicts or are just more comfortable working by themselves. We would prefer it if you worked in a group. That's kind of the point of the summer program, is to create a space for you to collaborate with people that you might not have gotten the chance to collaborate with before. But if you would prefer to work by yourself, that's okay. We had individual submissions for our winter camp as well. So it's preferred if you can work in a group, and we'll try to help you find group members, but sometimes it doesn't always work out like that. So if you would prefer to really work by yourself, you can, but if you want to give working in a group a try, we would definitely recommend that. All right. So it's gonna start it for when you answer your question. Yeah, so just like even one person responds, we can do it. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Again, type in the chat when you have an answer. Okay, so how many specialties and subspecialties are there to choose from in medicine? That was quick. Yes, there are actually, this was the first slide that we talked about too. There are, I think, 135 to choose from. So there are a ton of medical specialties because this includes specialties and subspecialties. So even if there's just one specialty, like perhaps specializing in obstetrics and gynecology, you can also go into like fetal medicine, prenatal medicine. There are a ton of subspecialties within there. So it can get pretty refined. Okay, true or false? Becoming an MD is the only way to make a difference in healthcare. False. Good job, everyone. Okay, specialists in this field work with diseases of the respiratory and or immune system. Yes, allergy and immunologist. Good job, everyone. So what kind of specialists help care for patients before, during, and after their surgery via sedation? Red, anesthesiology. Perfect. Good job, everyone. Specialists in what field work with diseases involving the hair in males? That was very fast. Oh my goodness. Yes, yellow, dermatology. Good job, everyone. True or false? Emergency medical doctors diagnose primarily via x-rays, ultrasounds, and or MRIs. Yes, false. Good job. Okay. Phlebotomy is a procedure in which a needle is used to draw blood from a or an. Good job. I'm seeing it a lot in the chat. Yes, veins. Good job, everyone. I'm speeding through this. While drawing blood, the needle should enter at an angle of how many degrees? Yeah, this one was trickier. It's actually 15 to 30, not 30 to 45. During appendectomies, an incision is made in the what side of the abdomen? Also a trickier one. Someone says blue, upper left. It's actually lower right. Yeah, this was a tricky one too. Yeah, someone says bottom right, lower right. Yeah, so it is lower right, although this is definitely a tricky one, so I can understand responding with any of them. Okay, very last question. Which type of scan can produce a greater in-depth visual results? Perfect, seeing it a lot in the chat too. MRIs. So I see some MRIs popping in. And again, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. But that is all we have for you today. So congratulations to everyone that did the Kahoot. Thank you so much for joining us for our first week of our summer program. This wraps up our entire week. We'll see everyone next Wednesday, same time. Next Wednesday, we're going to be doing our medical debate. So we're going to be releasing both your mandatory homework assignments and also the medical debate pamphlet. So the way that the debate is going to work next Wednesday is that we're going to be splitting you up into some breakout rooms. You can talk with some people about some topics that we're going to be releasing, and then we'll bring everybody back. We can talk about things as a group and then split back out for a couple of different topics. So that's how that's going to work. We are asking that for attendance and participation, that you at least speak once or respond in the chat at least once about any of the topics. But other than that, you're more than welcome to spend the weekend resting, relaxing. Maybe if you want to take a look at the research symposium document, you can take a look at the medical debate pamphlet. We're also going to be releasing homework, but as of right now, there's nothing that you are obligated to do. We're going to be sending out a message too if you want to get started on finding group members for the research symposium. But other than that, I'll stick around if people have questions, and Maude will also be here to answer your questions as well. But if we don't see you until next Wednesday, we hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend. Get lots of rest, and we'll see you later.